Very, I guess, a very hot topic from some of the comments that we've seen. And it's part of the series of the board of directors kind of talking about performance reviews. And so we're definitely going to talk about that one. I know we released it on Facebook. I know many of you, and let me put it back up, many of you have probably seen this pop up on Facebook. So that is the topic for today. But before we jump into the topic, as people are coming in, give people some time. Harriet, how was your weekend?
My weekend was good. A good balance of productivity and rest. So that's always a perfect combination. How about yourself?
It was good. It was good. I am sticking to the Sundays off. Like Sunday's the day of rest. You know, what's so interesting about that is, you know, that the day when there's like a pile of stuff that needed to get done. And usually by like Saturday night, like my wife and I went out Saturday, and after we got back home, I'm like, yo, Sunday is coming. So I need to get some more work done.
Do you do a hard stop at 12 a.m. midnight, like 11:59 p.m. Saturday?
Not really. Not really. The way I do it is once I wake up on Sunday morning, like I don't do any work on Sunday. Like I don't even look at my laptop. So that's kind of how, so I'm like, hey, I got to get this done before I go to bed. And so I was up working like late Saturday night after Lola and I got back from the basketball game, and Lola was sleeping good, dreaming about something. And I'm just like, okay, all right, let me get this done. But then Sunday, I'm like, I'm not touching anything Sunday. So yeah, so it was definitely a good weekend. I mean, and what's, you know, oh, yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, one of the things that I find to be so, you know, interesting is on Sundays when I am taking that break for ideas, things that I've been trying to like figure out all week long or whatever, it just gives me that mental break to be able to think through some of those things. So I'm always grateful for the Sundays.
That's a good thing. Rest is necessary. Like rest is a part of God's divine plan for how we should live. I think he gave us that example when he established the world. He did it in 6 days. On the seventh, he rested. I think that's a blueprint for us. And I'm not the best at it. I'm going to be very honest. I'm not very good at it. My husband, as busy as he is, he's a little better at it than me, because like today is his off day to the extent practical. But I'm still trying to find a day where I am doing nothing. I can get pockets like half a day, but we're going to work on it. So we're going to figure it out.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say your husband is really good at it. And he's really good at helping me, because he texted me yesterday and was like, hey, Terrell, I know you're resting today, so don't do this today. But hey, I need such and such for the tax return, stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I will get that taken care of Monday morning.
He's good at it. He'll tell me on time, hey, you just don't go to work today. Just go tomorrow. And I say, you know, you can do that because you got a wife you got a helpmate who picks up the pieces. Right. So anyway, we're gonna work that out. I'm gonna find me a day.
Awesome. I love it. Well, as we said today, interesting topic that I think a lot of people found a lot of interest in today. You know, one of the things that I thought about when, you know, I was kind of, you know, collecting my thoughts on like, hey, what are we going to talk about today? And just going back to that, you know, the board of directors series where we talked about when it comes down to board of directors, it's just the role that they play in a church, a nonprofit, even for-profit organizations and stuff, and just really getting the administrative side of things in order. And one of the areas that you see, I would say, I'm gonna call it abuse. You see abuse is when it comes down to churches as far as like the lack of accountability. And, you know, there were some questions that came in, so we're definitely going to dive into this topic. And so if you guys have any comments, we'll keep an eye out for more comments and more questions that you have. So definitely chime in. But, you know, wanted to get your initial thought, like, you know, when it comes down to, you know, who checks the pastor, who reviews the pastor's performance? Like, what are your initial thoughts on that topic?
Man, loaded question. So when you posted, full disclosure, when you posted that the topic today was going to be, should God be the only one that can judge the pastor? My phone started, the sex started going on, inbox messages, ooh, this going to be good. So, all right. So here's my initial response. Should God be the only one who can judge your pastor? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No man is an island. And so if you are a pastor, a senior pastor, a leader, and you feel like no one in your church can give you an assessment except for the Lord, then your church is doomed. Because that's not even kingdom minded. That's not even how God operates, right? That's not the way. And so now we'll get into, I think there are ways in which pastors should be evaluated. You know, it doesn't need to be coming to the pastor with everything you don't like and every complaint you have, because people will drive you crazy. You know, this is a church show, but they say opinions are like buttholes now. I ain't gonna get into that. Everybody else. So don't come at this man or woman crazy. But yes, you should be evaluated. There should be key criteria. There should be metrics, performance goals. It should be tied with compensation bonuses and increases. Yes, your pastor should be evaluated by someone other than the Lord. Now he needs to be evaluated by the Lord as well. But in a ministry, if you are working in a ministry and you're taking these people tithes and offers as a salary to do a job, any job should come with a job description, job expectations, and a performance evaluation. That's my easy answer of absolutely. The pastor should be evaluated.
Awesome. And, I would second that, because I definitely do believe that pastors should be evaluated. And, there are a lot of, churches that I've come across where they're like, well, the pastor answers to the Lord. And you know what? I don't disagree with that. What I tell people, though, is that if you live in the United States of America, your pastor may very well answer to the Lord, but the IRS also expects an answer as well. Because Uncle Sam says, because we have given you 501c3 status, exactly, there are some aspects that the federal government does say, and the state government, because you have exempt status, they're like, hey, there should be some assessment. In which, what I find is that churches that are structured where the pastor answers to no one, it's like you are, as a pastor, you are exposed to more risk than you can imagine if you answer to no one. Because if something goes wrong, it all comes down to you because you answer to no one.
You need the checks and balances. A church should not be a dictatorship. This ain't Russia, man. Don't be Putin in your congregation, okay? Right? We need checks and balances. Like you had a good point. If you have 501c3 status, you are obligated to have a board. I hope that you are using your board and you just didn't put down people's names and addresses so they could pass y'all to get exempt status, right? You need these things. And it's not to be negative or to critique. You need these things in place so you can grow. How am I doing? What's the assessment? We've been here 30 years. Is this ministry growing? Are we helping people? Are we getting better? Are we maintaining the status quo? Are we doing worse? I think that evaluations at the end, the bottom line of it helps us to be better, to do God's mission better, right? So we need them. And to stay in compliance with the government, because they will put you in jail. Not only will you answer to the IRS, you'll talk to that judge and that bailiff while you going to jail, bro.
It's a very real and unfortunate situation is where, like, I've gone back and read court cases or situations where a minister has gone to prison for something. And in some of those instances, it wasn't the minister or the pastor that did something wrong. It was someone in their organization that did something wrong. But because there was no structure and the pastor was answerable to no one, then when the authorities came in, they're like, we got to hold somebody accountable. There's no type of authority structure. They went straight for the pastor, and the pastor wasn't the one that actually did something wrong, but they were the one that lost their ministry. They were the one that ended up going to prison, had to pay fines. And it's just like, that could have been avoided.
in the legal world that said if you're at the top, it's either you knew or you should have known. Because if you're running your organization in such a manner that everything runs through you or by you, when you set yourself up like that, like you say, you do yourself more harm than good. Because since you don't have these systems of checks and balances and these procedures and these meetings and these records and these minutes, right, and these policies and following up to see if they're following, then it is on you. It's your it was your show when you was calling all the shots. It's your show when it all crumbles down, right? You don't get one without the other.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's some of those things that, we're going to dive in a little bit more. But before we dive into some of the, more of our thoughts and kind of our observations on this, there were some questions that came up some questions that came up that some people put on your page. So I wanted to go through some of those questions and we'll go one by one and just kind of give our thoughts on those questions. So you can go ahead and pull those up and we'll start with those. I'm
going to pull up the question now and I'm going to say his name since he publicly put the question on there. Okay. Let me see if I can get to the questions without it showing a lot. Here we go. I had a question from a Brian Brunson. He says, will you guys speak to what about pastors that founded the church, pastors that were not voted in, they were not hired on, but maybe they were in the line of succession? Should they be evaluated? So pastors who founded the church themselves, they weren't voted in, they weren't hired on by a board. This is this pastor's vision and baby. Should that person, their church, it ain't the Lord's church, it's their church. Pastor who, this is my ministry, should they be evaluated by the people who didn't find the church, who found the church with them? What are your thoughts, Terrell?
My thoughts are there absolutely should be some evaluation, because I think no matter, even if you founded the church and you started it, the work that you're doing in the church is because members showed up, members have been giving, and they have been participating. So although you may have started it all, you're not the only one putting in work and effort and moving towards whatever the objective of your church is. So there should be some type of mutual accountability between the person who founded it and the people that you're leading, as well as the people you're leading should have some type of accountability to the pastor, because there should be that mutual respect and mutual expectation there. So it looks like, go ahead.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. Yes, it does not matter if the Lord gave you the vision to be the founder of the church. You should get an agreement with the people that the Lord has placed on your team. Don't put people on your board that you would not be willing to take advice from. Can we say that? So I think a lot of this becomes, if you are the founder, you're in a unique position. You get to select your own board if y'all applying for 501c3 status. Don't put people on your board who you have a problem with taking their advice, heeding to their counsel, you know what I'm saying, or them reviewing you. It defeats the purpose, right? We are a sensitive people. That's not designated by color. Some people don't like constructive criticism or feedback. If you're not praising them, they don't want to hear it. That's not real life, right? That's not real life. That's not how this thing works. So yes, even if you are the founder, you should be evaluated, right? You should want to know if you are leading this thing and carrying this thing out, the vision that the Lord gave you, in the manner that's most beneficial to the ministry and to the people that y'all serve. His next question was, what about the one that says he or she should have to answer to no board, deacon, but to God? Same thing. Since God called it. That's my favorite. God. And I'm laughing, brother. I know pastors, because of my line of work and what I do, I know pastors who think just like this. And I'll be like, what in the narcissistic mess is this? You know what I'm saying? This ain't God, right? So it's just, everyone should answer to somebody. Beyond, even though God called you, he assembled people around you to help you carry the vision, right? And let's say this, and I'm going to give another caveat I've done with other churches. If you're not comfortable with the people on your board in your ministry evaluating you, hire a third-party consulting group company to come in and assess your books, your policies, to observe what's going on. Somebody needs to evaluate you, okay? right? Now, it's another problem when the people who there with you can't. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, then hire some people who are qualified and skilled in that area to come in and do an assessment of your ministry and of your leaders to see if this is the right way. Okay, that's another.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say, I mean, to that, I do think where I've seen that to become an issue is where there is just this contentious relationship. There's this power struggle between the people on the board and the pastor or the ministers. And sometimes it may be the board that started the power struggle, or it may be the pastor that started the power struggle. And it's one of those things that I tell people is especially in a church. Now, I say I'm a Christian, so you're going to get a Christian perspective on the different things, to where I always ask them, I was like, okay, all right, if you're having this contentious fight between them, have you prayed about this? And what did God tell you? How did God tell you to handle it?
Shout out these problems. You know, that don't happen often. What did the Lord say? Take down your ego and your own bravado. And what has the Lord told you about it? Sometimes I think we forget that this is God related, right?
Yeah.
And that's so critically important. What does the Lord say? I love that.
Absolutely. And I think as you're working through that, one of the things that I was advised, like, even if you are the person who started it, or you feel like, hey, I'm the only one I only answer to God, I do think you also have to take in the fact that you are leading other human beings. And people, they don't tend to respond very well to leaders who aren't accountable. And although you may be called to do it and you may be doing the right thing, one of the things that I find is that a lot of pastors end up getting themselves into a very unnecessarily sticky situation. One is because the people don't think that they're doing the right thing. And part of the reason is because there was no clear standard established. And I think that's where Harriet talked about, like, hey, if you don't think your board is going to fairly assess you, bring in a third party that can establish, like, hey, here's what the clear expectation for the pastor is. Here's what the clear expectation for the board is. And then everybody knows. Then it's not so much of a, hey, it's a surprise, we got you, we got to get this pastor out. It's, hey, are you doing what you agreed to do? And I do think that starts to build way more confidence in your people. If your people can see, like, hey, this person said they were here to do X, they are making progress on it, people will believe in your leadership a lot more when they can see that you are accountable to what you have actually committed yourself to do. And what I have seen from a lot of churches are churches that pastors and leaders that take that approach. The people tend to invite other people to be a part of that church, and people start giving more of their time. They start giving more of their financial resources because they actually see the vision, and they see that the leader is accountable to the vision that that organization is after.
You are absolutely 100% correct. I'm like that in my own life. If I'm in a ministry and I can see, like, they are not perfect, but organized, structured, accountable, clear vision, clear goals, clear steps to get there. You know what I'm saying? And moving in that direction. You're going to start a movement. It's going to gain momentum. I am going to say, hey, you need to come check out this church right here, right? You need to come check out this pastor right here. People going to give more money there. People going to want to serve there. Because most people want to be led. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. By effective leadership. And it's twofold. And I always say this. I'm a fan of pastors. I'm a friend of pastors, a fan of pastors. And I understand the importance of a board. So I've seen it. Some pastors get bad reps. Some people, your board is just, they ain't right. This is a family-owned church, so we got controlling people on this board, and the board feel like the pastor need to do what we tell them to do. You know what I'm saying? And you got some pastors to be like, nah, I founded this church. What I say, go. And if this don't work, I'm going to clear this whole board out and start over. Both of these are wrong. Can I say that? All of this is wrong. We need harmony. Let's pray about these things. Let's pray about who to assess on our board. Let's pray about who we call calling to lead these churches. Let's pray about what we're really called by God to found a church. Were you supposed to find a church, or were you supposed to work in somebody else's ministry to care for their vision? It's a whole lot of background stuff we needed. And I think that if we are in our proper position to do what the Lord has called us to do in whatever season you're in, then the evaluations won't matter, right? Mm-hmm. Let's take out ego. Let's take out self. Let's take out pride. Let's take out money. And let's focus on being the best at what the Lord calls us to do, right? Even the scripture said, let a man examine himself. So if I'm examining myself, why can't my peers do it? Right? We do
Absolutely.
God. You know what I'm saying? And not be offended. And I think that there are ways to evaluate a pastor. Now, I said that before. I think that we need to have clear expectations on the front end. So if you didn't have it when you started the church, let's sit down and see, hey, man, what are we trying to accomplish? What are we looking for from our pastor? Do we know? Do we need to talk to some other pastors? Let's get a list of items. I like metrics and lists. To me, if you put the goals on the paper, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. What are the expectations? Don't come up to a pastor and fuss at him about something that you never defined that was necessary, right? Just because you don't like it done that way. If you like the King James and he like the Message Bible, well, give this man some leeway. It's still the word of God. Some people think like that. You know what I'm saying? Right? Let this man preach the way the Lord gave it to him. But it's a fine line, man. You got to walk it. I think the board needs to know their position to be trained, and the pastor needs to know what's expected of them. And we need to all be okay with our roles.
Absolutely. And I think that, one of the things we've talked about, week after week is that clarity of understanding. And I think that the more clarity all the parties involved have, I'm telling you, the greater the unity can be in that organization, because I've seen some of the same foolishness of where someone was upset because the senior pastor's not the one doing all the hospital visits. And it was a church of like 1,500 members, and they're upset because the pastor's not visiting everybody who goes to the hospital. And it's just like, that's not realistic. Like,
that man can't even look at all them people, right? He need to have some elders. Bro, that man can't even, and there you go, unrealistic expectations. So you shouldn't do that. Some people think because they pay a pastor, they own him. You do not own this man or woman. You don't. They got lives, they got families, they got children to feed, they got things to do as well. So it's like, yeah, Terrell and I have been preaching to y'all. Let's get stuff on paper. Let's get organized from the beginning. And you can modify things. Sometimes you don't know it until it happens, but be willing to go back and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's adjust some things. These things are important. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I definitely think, I strongly advocate that, an effective board can be a very, very critical role of protecting the pastor, protecting the man or the woman that holds that position, because as a pastor, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that comes at you. I mean, and you got to deal with your own personal life. You got to deal with, the organizational aspect of the church. You got to deal with all of the pressures of the things that are happening to the people in your organization. So it is very easy for a pastor to become overwhelmed. So for those pastors that if you're the one founding the church, is the way of looking at it as the performance review is not something to sit back and just judge you and condemn you. It's more of laying out like, hey, here is a way for the board to be able to evaluate the progress you're making in different areas. And if there's an area that you're not making progress in, what's the reason? Like, hey, I'm not able to do this effectively because too much of my time is being pulled into this. Well, that's where the board can step in and say, hey, maybe somebody else in the organization should be doing that. Let's take that off the pastor's plate so the pastor can do what we brought him here to do or her here to do. And I think if you're not having those reviews, there's no way for that conversation to happen.
And I agree. And the reviews can also be a benefit to the ministry leader or the staff person. I personally use performance evaluations in my current corporate job to show my CEO, this is what you asked me to do. This is what I've done. I have exceeded your expectations by 60%. Let's correspond that into hey man, maybe I am working more than what I'm being paid to work. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This justifies a raise, right? Or maybe I'm getting paid way too much for what I'm doing. Let's scale it back. It can really, really be beneficial if you're doing your job well and you're really trying to get it done. You know what I mean? It can be a feather in the pastor's cap, like you said. I don't have enough time to do all of this stuff, and I am doing it. If I'm a board member, you got the pastor working 90 hours a week and paying him for 35. We need to take some things off this moment a man's plate or give him some more money. You follow what I'm saying? It can be a benefit to you. It's not always negative. It's not always negative. It's more of an asset than it is a liability, because it's going to help you better assess your performance, what you're doing with your ministry, whether you are properly being compensated for all that you are doing. It can really only help you, right?
Absolutely. And I also think that, it also gives the board a objective way to support the pastor, because no matter what type of organization you're in, you are always going to have some people, whether they're in the congregation or if you're leading a for-profit business, you're going to have some people who have something negative to say about the leadership. It's just going to happen. But when your board is actually doing an objective performance review, it gives them the ammunition they need to effectively defend and effectively to support when they start hearing rumors or whatever come up and stuff, because you will have that. I mean, I think you would hope that a church wouldn't, but the reality of it is people will find something to complain about. And
always.
And I think it's helpful for the board to be, equipped with enough information, enough insight to be able to come to the aid of their pastor, their leaders, to be able to say, hey, here's what we brought this person here to do. Here's what the person is doing. They're making progress on this, and this. And it allows the board to be in a position to put out these small rumor fires before they become this blown out big issue and cause the church to separate over something that wasn't true.
Right. And something else that I thought about, I think that, so the performance evaluation, I think it should be annual. Some people do them multiple times a year, but I think it shouldn't be a surprise to whoever your senior pastor or leader is. I think that the board and the pastor should sit down annually and come up with goals together. Y'all assess the ministry together. We doing this thing together. So let's look at where we are. What, if you're a new pastor, what have y'all seen? What do you hope to achieve? If you're a pastor coming in with some experience, let's set out and make goals together. So we make these goals together, and the pastor is not surprised. They are not demands that have been placed on him that he didn't see coming. Let's as much as possible, kind of agree to it. This is what we're trying to accomplish together. Do it together, and then see in 12 months if we've been successful. If not, let's retool. If we have, then let's keep going and see what we can add to it. And so it's how you do it, so it won't be offensive. But if you're dealing with, like I say, the narcissistic, egotistical, this is my church, and they taking a page from the book of Elder Tupac Shakur, only God can judge me. That was on the All Eyes on Me after 96. Then that's the problem. And we are not of the world, so we should not have these mindsets, right? That's how I feel, right?
Absolutely. Now, we've been talking about, the evaluation and assessment for the pastor. What are your thoughts on evaluation and assessment for the ministers on staff or people who have ministerial roles?
You need it for every, I think an evaluation should be done for every person. Definitely if you are a paid member of the church, paid staff member of the church, or a volunteer leader of a certain department. We need it everywhere. Everyone should be evaluated, right? Because how do we know if our ministry is effective as a whole if we are not assessing every department head, the staff? Are we doing what we agreed to do? But in order to do this, you got to be organized from the front end. Policies, procedures, job descriptions, expectations. But yeah, it should not just be the pastor. It should be everybody who is working in the ministry. Right? Definitely, if you get absolutely. And also, if you like a volunteer department head, you just need to see, is this effective? If you're over the media ministry, how is that going? Are our streams picking up? Is our viewership picking up? Is our equipment good? Who are we reaching? Are we tracking these things? Children's ministry, is it effective over here? What are we doing? How are babies doing? Like you need to evaluate these things. Whole church.
Absolutely. I'll second I'll just dive in a little bit more on the media, which is something that a lot of churches have definitely experienced over the past year with so much going remote. Is if your media team is not on point, your service online, it has been really turning a lot of your members off because the audio's not good, the video, they can't get the right camera angles. Like, there should be some level of evaluation. And I think where this becomes a little tricky for some churches is that it's like, well, these people are volunteering. We don't want to like turn them away. But it's like, you do still want to have some level of, hey, here is the standard. If you're going to volunteer in this area, here's the standard. And of course, it's going to turn some people off. Some people don't want to be accountable, some people, but that is where, hey, as Christians, we should be using our faith and praying like, God, bring us the right people that are going to volunteer in this area, because you can't allow the standards to drop just to keep people happy. Because just as much as we need to evaluate the pastor, there, as Harriet said, there needs to be assessment for everybody involved, because we need to know, are we effectively moving towards the objective of this ministry?
That's it. And the standard should be excellence. And I use media as an example. A lot of people don't know this. My degrees, besides my law degree, are in media. Mass comm and media studies, my bachelor's and my master's. And I've worked in TV and radio, behind the scenes and production. So that matters, because all departments of the church, we should operate in excellence, but especially the media. Especially the pandemic just really showed it. This is how you are conveying the word of God to people who may not get to the church or don't have access, and it should be top-notch quality. And I get it. Every church does not have the same amount of money. So if you're in a small church, then get the member who got the iPhone 13 and have them go live. No, for real. Like, we gotta assess that everybody's not a mega ministry with $1 million and multi-million-dollar budgets. But it can be hey, well, y'all invest in a $30 tripod stand from Amazon and get the member with the best phone, like the Samsung Galaxy 21 or the iPhone 13, and let them broadcast it. Because these phones are pretty good. If you're in a church that got a real ministry, and I get it, we need the volunteers, but hire people to come in and train them. Show them the proper way to work the camera. Listen, man, my pet peeve, if you cannot operate the soundboard, get off of it. This is not a technical paid person to get these audio levels right. And we need to have that. And we never want to offend in the church. You don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. But I mean, we're going about trying to convey the word of God, and it got to be done with excellence. So this might not be the area for you. This ain't your gift, baby. Go serve in the kitchen. We need somebody with technical experience that can do this. And you got to be able to tell that to people in love. We want you in the area that's best for you. What are your skill sets? We can try you here, but I'm going to tell you on the front end, if you don't catch this quickly, we're going to have to put you someplace else, because this is a highly technical position, you know?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Tiptoe around these things in the church and be honest in love. And don't just shut them out. Let's find someplace else for them to be, or let them shadow the person and learn it. But you should not play. We too lackadaisical. We too quick to be subpar with doing stuff for God. I don't like that. Right? Yeah. You go to your day job and get an evaluation. Why not get an evaluation of what you're doing for the Lord? I go harder. I'll come late to my day job. I won't be late to church. Right? Because I care about this on record. Well, they know I'll be late here. It's okay. Right? I care about what I'm doing for the Lord more than I care about what I'm doing for these other people. Because my relationship with God is just that serious. And you should be able to get evaluated on that, critiqued on that, get advice on that, get goals on that, expectations on that, and be okay with that, because you should serve God with excellence. And that comes back to these evaluations. Serve God with excellence in all things, no matter what your position is. That's it.
Absolutely. And I would say, as a free tip, one of the things that I've done with a couple of churches is that they've been looking to hire media, because a lot of people were trying to get into, hey, how do we get into streaming? And one of the things that you can do is, if you're a church and you can't afford to, like say, pay a third party to come in and train you, like there are a ton of YouTube tutorials that talk about technical topics. The YouTube tutorials may be 10 minutes long. One of the things that I've told several churches to do is, hey, make it a requirement for your media team to watch these 2 10-minute videos about how to adjust lighting properly so that it is captured well on camera. I mean, because there are just too many options out here for us to be able to walk in excellence. And, for some of that is, it may be a good upfront evaluation for volunteers. Let's say if someone wants to work in the media department, hey, watch these 2 videos. If they don't watch the videos at all, they can't find the time to watch the videos, that might be an upfront assessment for you that's probably not going to be a person who takes instructions very well.
And you got to read that. And I don't want to just pick on media. I'm going to give you something else. The usher ministry. If you're not good with people, patient, and kind, can't stand nasty ushers, bro. Why you want to be usher? You always got an attitude. Like, this ain't your area. You need to go work in somewhere. You don't have to talk to nobody. Okay? Like, don't put the non-people person. Are you friendly? Can you smile? You don't like helping people? Your feet hurt? Then don't usher. Like, we just need to start being honest in the church, man. Let's be honest in the church, right? That's it.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I think part of that all stems back to it is these evaluations of if a person has a paid or a volunteer position, is asking yourself, like, how are we going to evaluate, is this person doing a good job or not? And if they're not doing a good job, hey, what kind of instruction or support do we need to give for this person to do a good job? Because what I have seen in a lot of cases where someone wasn't doing a good job, when you really dug in, it's like they just needed clearer instructions, or maybe they just needed some, clarity about a certain factors. They got that clarity and their performance went through the roof. And so I do think a lot of that comes up when you're doing effective performance reviews, where you have clear objectives about what is this person supposed to accomplish, or what things are they supposed to get accomplished in this role, and then evaluating how well are they doing at that. And that gives you so much insight to help guide and make sure your organization is moving more and more towards an effective place in your purpose.
I want to add one caveat on that one, and I think we can wrap it up if you're good with this. As the senior pastor and the leader, they always said whatever's on the head will be on the body. Lead by example. If your pastor is okay with saying, hey, even I'm getting evaluations, it's just to make this ministry better. Lead by example. So to the people who may be some, oh, man, I've been in this church 60 years. Ain't nobody who 35, 39 will come in here and tell me about my performance. But if you're a leader, if your head is saying, no, this is what we're doing, and it's because we're going to serve God in excellence, and it's going to start with me. I'm not going to ask y'all to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. It will set the tone. That level of transparency and openness from your leader will make the rest of the people in your church fall in line. So just think about that, right? Think about that. Lead by example, pastors. Get everybody else in line by not yelling at them and fussing at them, but by showing them the way. Okay? Show them the way.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, you guys, we went over a little bit later today, but it's a good topic. So definitely join the Facebook group. It is a Church Law and Finance. Continue to leave your questions there. We'll continue to work to try to get those in, to get you some insight. Some of the questions we haven't been able to cover in the videos, we've just actually responded directly to people in the comments in the group. So continue to join the group, and thanks for tuning in. Until next Monday.